Frank Holmes is back for this week's Gold Game Film, but first, Freedom Fest is coming. And joining me now is Frank Holmes. Frank, bit of a bye week last week. Where were you?
Traveling a lot, doing charitable work with Frank Schuster and President Clinton, from Haiti to Colombia and Costa Rica. So it was lots of travel.
All right, Frank, let's start with Nonfarm payrolls from last week. That was the big mover. Of course, it beat estimates, and in turn, gold, which was trading lower before that, continued its downward trend. So, what did you make of Nonfarm payrolls last week?
Well, what shook gold was the fear of rising interest rates because of the payroll numbers. On the other hand, it could lead to inflation. So I think the greater worry is inflation. And I really don't think that interest rates can rise dramatically because the fiscal policy drags are still so high. There's just so many rules and regulations, from getting a loan at the bank for a house, for a car, whatever in America. If rates were to rise dramatically, so many people wouldn't qualify. So I'm really not all that worried about it.
Now let's look at weaknesses. In your SWOT analysis, you mentioned India, which just had a huge decline in the first half of 2014 with gold shipments into the country. What do you see happening there?
Well, when going to India, I think it's important. In the previous week, I commented that the jewelry stores were going to go on strike, and that they're pushing the government that they must address this export-import tax duty. And what came out was that the government is looking at going from 10 to 8%. The big issue is the smuggling that's to take place. So yes, what is reportable gold demand has dropped down 77%, but there's no reflection on how much is being smuggled into the country.
Switching over to strengths now, gold has had a pretty good 2014, up 10% this year. Now, what is really causing this bounce back after what we saw happen in 2013 or the second half of 2013? And is this sustainable?
Yeah, I think what's really important is that last spring we saw the punch bowl being pulled away by the central bank, and rates reeled from minus 50 basis points to plus 50 basis points. And anytime you have positive real interest rates, that is, what will the government pay investors over the inflationary number, the CPI number, is the higher that goes, the less attractive gold is. So what we saw is that the big decline in gold had basically taken place to December, when interest rates were the most positive, and since then they have gone negative again. Since they have gone negative again, that fear trade of gold is starting to rise.
Now let's switch it over to our OT segment. Now, with the summer in full swing now, we know volume of trading is thinner than usual. Gold's had a pretty good 2014 so far, up 10%. Great compared to the end of the second half of 2013. But now we're entering these months where historically gold tends to trend higher. Now, is this an opportunistic time for gold right now?
Yeah, the second half of the year has historically been stronger than the first half. The beginning of the religious buying that takes place is Ramadan, which is we're in Ramadan now, which came early, and you have a wedding season. Now, the Indian wedding season, the first waves ends July 7th, I believe July 9th, and then we get into a lull, but then it starts up again. And we're going to have a sequence and a series of many holidays globally between now and the Chinese New Year. So odds favor for gold to rise. If we get fear trade, and what I love to call that love trade, then we get substantial moves in gold prices.
Yeah, and sort of sticking with that fear trade mentality, Germany saying they're not going to repatriate their gold. Now, what does this do for investors? How do they take in information like this?
Well, there's two camps. And there's a camp that believes gold for Goldman Sachs to be able to sell into the market to maintain their bearish sentiment. And the other one is that there's no gold there. So that's why they can't repatriate during that time period. And on the backdrop of that, over the weekend was the whole spy drama taking place between the U.S. and Germany. So I really, think a lot of it's lots of noise, etc. I think the important part is that the world continues to grow. It's very accommodative. What took place 2 weeks ago, which is very important, is the Chinese PMI turned positive again with their accommodative stature. And our analysis has shown that anytime that PMI turns positive, it's all of a sudden puts a floor into many of the commodity prices. And then we had JP Morgan's global purchasing manufacturers index turn positive. That is, where the 1 month went above the 3 months. Well, that is very significant because all the research has shown that that's bullish for gold, copper, silver, etc.
Now, looking at threats, we saw on Thursday with non-farm payrolls coming out, beating expectations and gold's reaction to it, that a positive economy is playing into the bear's mentality. But I mean, when it seems like a knee-jerk reaction every time a positive headline comes out for economic data, when the fact is that we have been seeing a progressively better American economy over the last few months. What do you think, Frank?
I think there's just a bearish sentiment towards gold. So no matter what the economic data point is, it's perceived as a threat rather than the opportunity. And we try to weigh this, and we go through great regressional studies to try to say, well, where are we to get through the emotions? But there is a sort of bearish sentiment towards gold, and that's the same thing. We've had a bearish sentiment towards the stock market, and we're getting a great rally in both.
All right, Frank, let's move it over to your touchdown pass of the week.
Well, we're going to have Chinese CPI come out. That's the big thing to follow. In the U.S., it's going to be pretty quiet. Next week, we're going to get PPI, CPI, everything that goes with spelling Mississippi.
Excellent, Frank. Thanks for your time today.
Take care.
And thank you for watching this edition of Gold Game Film. Remember, July 9th through July 12th, the Kitco News team will be in Las Vegas for Freedom Fest, so make sure you check out that coverage. Have a good one.